He's been working for over 15 years or 20 years, if I'm not wrong, with the tax department. He also holds a PhD in economics from Colorado State University and an MSc in policy economics from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. We are very much looking forward to hearing from Simon, who kind of brings his unique perspective of kind of being involved from the side of policy and government, and also bringing the analytical space from the field of economics. So Simon, the floor is yours. You have 1 hour, and yeah, we will just, if there are any questions along the way, people will just interrupt you.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rajesh. Thank you so much for everyone's coming here. It's a privilege for me to present my unpublished paper, our unpublished paper with Dr. Arifin Rosid. Probably here, Arifin. We are discussing about how to tax conflicts. So it's kind of a very different kind of subjects that I used to, because I'm working with like environmental economics, like energy economics, but we want to try something new. So here's the title, Taxing Turmoil, Exploring the Fiscal Dynamics in Conflict Zones. So my scope is Global South, not just Indonesia, but all the countries in the Global South. Okay, I start with the quotations from Major General William Sherman. He was the American general in the Civil War between 1865 to 1821. So he said that fear is the beginning of wisdom. It's kind of tricky what he said to all the people there at that time, because all the conflicts over there is just only between the state actors and non-state actors. So it's kind of challenging how to make a difference between how to make a conflict or to do a conflict between states and states. I will explain later in the next slides. Okay, so here are 4 reasons why we come up with all these notions of conflicts. So first of all, there's a widespread conflicts around the Global South. So for example, in Africa, in Asia, say for like South Asia, India, or Nepal, or somewhere else that still have conflicts between the state actors, between the governments, and non-state actors like the rebels. And then there's impact on the economic activity. Sometimes wars will reduce the trade activity, economic activity within the countries. And also there's fiscal challenges. I mean, the limited studies on the connections between war, economic growth, and fiscal capacity. There's one paper, actually, it's done by Berman et al. In 2013, but it's only part of the small portions about the complex itself. So there are a lot of notions that we want to explore in this paper. So not just of the conflict itself, but how they interact with each other between the actors and the non-actors. And then we are focusing on the regions like Latin America, like Colombia, and Argentina, where the conflicts occur more. And then Southern Africa, like Congo, South Africa, Middle East, not part of the Middle East like Israel and Hamas, but it's kind of a different kind of conflicts within the governments and the rebels. And West Africa, North Africa, which is like Algeria, Egypt. So it's kind of a different kind of wars, or the notions of conflicts itself is very limited, rather than between the states or between the countries.
So we are only going to think about intrastate conflicts, not about interstate conflicts.
Yes, yeah. Not the interstate, yeah. Exactly. Okay. And here's the motivation. So because I'm coming from the tax background, so we want to see how the fiscal capacity is very critical for governments in conflict zones. So governments try to provide services to all the societies, and they also want to reduce conflicts within their area of controls. And also the rebel groups, So these rebel groups sometimes coming from different areas within the countries. They are called the non-state actors, and the government is the actors. So this is not the way we think about the conventional war, something like that, but it's a different kind of complex. So the rebel groups exploit weak governance. Sometimes government is kind of very lenient to all the non-state actors, and they come up with the very high extortions, and that will be reduced investments that we'll discuss later. And there are three key research questions that we want to highlight. So first, how do rebel groups utilize the taxations and the extortion? So there are taxations, and in other terms, we have the extortion. So these two come up with the different kind of results. So we will see later in the. Oh, go ahead.
Does taxation only happen from the government, or the rebel groups will impose tax? Because rebel groups sometimes they tax people as well, and they
Exactly.
service as well.
Yeah, so we will discuss that in the later slides. So there are interactions between the governments and also the non-state actors. You're right. Thanks. And also, what fiscal mechanisms are employed by the government to control the rebel financing? So we will use the game theoretical models to see how they interact and how they come up with the national equilibrium, some kind of solutions between them. So the final key research question is, what is the impact of the governance on the investment protection conflict zone? So bear with me. I don't know if I can finish this in 30 or 45 minutes. This is a very broad area. If you're interested in like a macro models, this one is very interesting. So our contributions is first. So I think this is the first paper to use game theory models to explore taxation and extortion dynamics in conflict zones. So far, as I explained, there's one paper from Berman, National Bureau of Economic Research, but that's very rare models that they use. So it's kind of different than what we use. So we find that the strong government interventions will reduce the rebel financing through the extortion. So we will see later in the slides. And the second one is the rebel groups, so the non-state actors. So if we talk about non-state actors, there's rebels around the world. They come up from a different type of area, so different kind of geographical background. So they all have a sort of quote unquote power to extort the local investments. And the policy implications, we want to have a coordinated military economic strategy. So this kind of, I can call it some military economics. So how they can sometimes do with a different kind of models and theories, so they can find a better way to reduce conflicts. Oh, go ahead.
Taxation only involves money, and does it involve humans as well? Because conscriptions are also a form of taxation.
Oh yes, I think you have already read the paper. Yeah, it's kind of a mix with the attacks and also the fatalities that I will explain later. So there's a body count that involved in this kind of models.
And here the strength of the state is going to make some kind of sense. Is that endogenous to the model? Is that exogenously given? How are we going to think about state capacity?
So if we talk about the state capacity, the state actors here, they will have call it endogenous models, but we will have to find the national equilibrium, how they act into the models.
So state capacity is going to be determined endogenously in your setting.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So we will see that in the models later in the slides. So bear with me. Thank you. And then before we go here, so I want to stress the main assumption here. So we will focus on the government versus rebels, not governments to governments. So this is not a state-to-state warfare seen in Israel versus Hamas or Ukraine. So this is different. So it's come from within the governments, within the countries. And the scope of conflict involving the major states, which means that's coming from the government itself. And it's different from the localized government rebel conflicts that we analyze here. And the data limitation, so we're not going back from the World War I or World War II in 1940s, but it's coming from the new millenniums, 2000 to 2022, and we're focusing on the government rebels, as I said before, and not the recent conventional warfare. And we will also focus on the predation, like the extortion. So we have extortion rates, and we also have a government rate. So government rates meaning the taxation rates, and extortion rates meaning the values of the extortion that the rebels have imposed. Okay, is there any questions? No? And then here's the literature review. So there are three main, I call the literatures that contribute to this paper. So first is from Rodriguez Franco in 2016. So they have research that the wealth tax, so they call it wealth tax, not the like a original tax, like a income tax. So wealth tax provided 20% of the defense and security budget during the conflict. So it's kind of interesting. Also from the point of view of Mablin Gutierrez is from Colombia. They said that taxation on the illicit economies is will produce the government's effects, in fact, in the state building, meaning how they create the harmony inside within the countries. And the second one is taxation in conflict economies. So there's several ideas or several research for this kind of taxing, but it's rather as revenue tools as a means to securing taxpayer accounts during the conflict. So most of the countries itself, they don't have a separate budget for distributing the revenues for just reducing the conflict. So they only have, like, the defense budget, the defense costs that they use every year, but not as a separated budget for the conflicts. And the question? No? So this, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was just surprised because I don't know if you're aware of like recent work in the last few years by Raul Sanchez Sierra, which kind of really closely speaks to, and he's only looking at Congo, but he's exactly looking at, how does taxation work, how do rebels and the state interact, how in fact rebels sometimes can be welfare increasing, how do the rebels react when the government able? So he talks about how in the short run it might be, and long run consequences can be very different. So I was just wondering how, because you just said that there are no kind of frameworks or models, and I would say that from what I hear, it seems to be very close to what Raul Sanchez is doing in his work in the context of Congo, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. Because they use some tools like empirical models that used to see how the taxations will impact on how they reduce the conflicts inside the governments. So it's kind of different, but we'll see later in the slides.
Okay.
So bear with me. It's kind of interesting to come up with this kind of ideas because a lot of research and a lot of studies coming in recent years, and they have a different kind of models, and they can come up with different tools. So it's kind of fascinating that people still involving in this kind of research studies. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is the data description. So I collect data from the new millennium, so 2000 to 2022, and there's some kind of reducing the countries because some countries doesn't have a VAT, some countries has a kind of property taxes, some countries no have a fatalities like Myanmar or probably Cambodia. So it's kind of like a leveling up. So no data or zero data on that kind of countries. So it's kind of filtering or eliminations over there. So I come up with 57 countries, around 11,493. So it's kind of representing the data to be analyzed in this paper. So like I said, we covered the Latin America, probably some of you here from Latin America, Southern Africa, Middle East, West Africa, North Africa like Egypt, and Southeast Asia, so Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand. And I collect the data from the open and published sources like World Bank. So tax revenues, government services, the spending data, some sort of data that already common in research areas. And there are, I think, one or two different sources that I use, like Uppsala Conflict Data Program. This is data sets that are very specific to the fatalities and conflicts. And from the Eclipse, so we want to find how the investments, somebody I think asking about how the property taxes and investment will impact the mobility of the rebels. So I come up with the data from Eclipse. And then, you want to ask something?
Yeah, sorry. I was just interested to know how maybe you're going to just mention it, how you ascertain government control. So is it like whether or not from, I think UCDP, whether or not like the number of fatalities on the rebel side is higher or something?
Yes, correct. I come up with the fatalities, I think already done by some researchers in UCDP and also the Eclipse. So they're openly wide databases. So I think they are very representative data. So I come up with the fatalities and registry numbers. Okay. The variables used here, the main variables are the tax revenues. It's very common. So percentage of GDP, extortion rates, it's coming from the UCDP, investment levels coming from the World Bank, and the government control that's coming from the UCDP. Okay. Oh, here are the summary statistics. I don't know if you can see it from here. There are a lot of variables over there. It's very common to see all the variables as kind of percentage of GDP, such as the property tax, income tax, value-added taxes. So I use VAT rather than the sales tax because it's kind of different than the developed countries, because developing countries, they use sometimes VAT. And also the events and the fatalities that I think you have already asked. It's coming from the UCDP, so different kind of values over there. So events is using the bodies. If you see it's like a coma over there, it doesn't mean it's like a half of the, it's just the mean or average. So,
sorry, tax also reports.
What about it tax? I'm just thinking.
Yeah.
Minus 0.02. And minimum for the property tax.
Minus, yes, that's a very good observation. So I think there's some kind of misstatement over there. It's supposed to be not minus because property taxes is supposed to be positive. Otherwise, government give subsidy with the property tax over there. So I just come up running out all the data sets and coming up with the.
Sir, my question is like Eclipse gives like various kinds, even things like various kinds of events, like even protests or even like peaceful demonstrations. So how exactly did you filter it out? Was it like only the battles between like government and rebels, or was it like even I think it even reports things like explosions and things like that? But those also considered, or is it strictly only like battles and things like that?
Yeah. So if you talk about or you think about the battles itself, it's kind of different than the states battles. It's more like how the government enforces the battles. So I use the defend military spending. So that's will represent how that's battles it's interacted to each other. So is it answering your questions? Okay.
And how do you get a figure on how much the percentage of GDP the rebels have invested? What's the data source for that? And how do you come up with an estimate for that?
For the investments?
Rebel investments.
Rebel investments. Okay. So the percentage of GDP. So I tried two different sources. First, how's the investments from 2022? And then I tried to see, so the rebel investment is not coming from the World Bank itself. It's coming from the UCDPs. They have sort of specific rebels investment. So
they provide an estimate.
They're providing the estimate. So it's kind of easy because they already calculated that on that part. So yeah. Okay. So here the summary statistics, so you can see it from talked to about, and it's kind of very common. So yeah. Okay. Continuing on okay. So oh no, it's so small. I hope you can see it from here, from the distance. So the first pictures is the VAT rates from 2000 and 2022. So the first part, if you can see, that's the Southern Africa, I mean South Asia over there. So they have a VAT more than the other regions. So I think they're collecting more VAT. So this is not connecting to the war or the conflict. So this is just a summary of how the VAT in different kind of regions. And then also the second part is the pictures of taxes from income, profits, and capitals. We call it the income tax. So the most for there is Southern Africa. If you guys from South, go ahead.
You do not data on tax collection.
Data of tax collections.
Tax, how much tax they got from the revenue, tax revenue. Because this is tax rate, right?
This is
so it can be like very high tax rate, but if people don't pay, it's.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, you're right. So I don't go far from to that perspective. So I just do the calculations between the tax revenues they collected divided by the GDP. So and this is very interesting. So for the property tax rates from 2022, I just got like a spike in Central Asia, like former Soviet Union's countries like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. So it's kind of a very standout compared to other regions, because I think that some of the data sets is 0 or even NAM. So I think I have to kind of filtering or simplifying that. So, and the last part is the total tax rates over there. Southern Africa is the leading collections of the total tax rates between the VAT, income tax, and also the property tax. So here are the summaries. Okay. So here's the fluctuating fatalities. So like I said before, around this millennium, so around this 20 years of periods of observations, the data shows that the significant peaks somewhere around about 300 to 200 fatalities during those periods. So significant peaks in North Africa, like Egypt, Libya, the neighboring countries of Egypt, East Africa, Latin America. So if you can see the sea, where is it? Here, so it's kind of fluctuating, but it's kind of increasing. So between 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2022, it's kind of increasing. But if you see from other regions, such as from Middle East, you can see it's like 0 because there are no data over there. So it's kind of very interesting. And the spike in between 2017. And if you can see from the Southern Africa, also it spikes in around 500 between 2012. So some events happening on that time period. So it's kind of very intriguing and also very interesting to see. And also the data gaps. So I have a limited data on Asia, Middle East fatalities, probably is not published, like in Egypt or Israel or Palestine. So I'm not using those data. So it's kind of interesting to see that Latin America is kind of increasing, especially in Colombia. Okay, so I think this is one of the variables that I come up with the sort of what we call it, the no data I've already done before. So I use this kind of variables to calculate the total damage cost. So it's very simple calculations. So I use weights A and B. So A representing the weights on events, and B is weights that representing the fatalities. So to see that the fatality is considered more severe, if B, so B is the F, the fatality is higher than the A or the event. So I use the 1/1.5 ratio for E and F. This is based on the historical data from the FIDEMIS database. So this database is updated regularly every year. So they come up with this ratio. And you can see that the North Africa and also the West Africa is the leading government that imposed the damage cost across the regions and observations. Question? Okay, so here's the data analysis. So here's the main menu. Time. Okay. 10 more minutes probably. Okay, this is.
You have still about a bit more than 25 minutes. Yeah?
25 minutes. Okay, so I can explain to you very slowly with this game theoretical model. So I use game theory models to see the interactions between the government and the rebel groups in conflict zones. And also I will use the empirical models. So I use the national equilibrium government rate and the national equilibrium extortion rate to come up with the results that put into the empirical models that I use in this paper. So the government variables, I use tax revenue as a percentage of GDP, government control coming from UCDP, and also the military spending. And part of the rebels variables is the extortion rates, violence come from the ECLIT and the UCDP, and the control over territory. So A, if the government control is equal to 1, and 0 is otherwise. Okay, so here's the game theoretical model. So I use the 2x2 matrices. You can come up with different matrices, 3x3, 4x4, 5x5, but it's simple kind of models between the rebels and the government. So if the rebels enforce, the non-state actors enforce, the government enforce, meaning conflict persists, right? And the government suppress the rebel.
I just want to ask, so your extortion and taxation rate, so the final outcome of this collection means it's just going to who are the stronger part to basically take, demolish the other. So there's no consideration on like public good spending and all those things.
Yeah, right. So if you want to talk about power itself, you can only do some part of this. So government force and the rebels enforce, or if the government force, that means more power from the government and less power by the rebels, something like that. But if no one, I mean the government surrender, rebels surrender, there are no payoffs between them. So it's a matter of how you see in this matrices. Okay,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Question. So how exactly, just to clarify, how exactly do you ascertain like government surrender or rebel surrender? Because does it mention specifically in the UCDP like side faction A or faction B won, or?
One of the database says, like for example, the fatalities in those database, they said, but it's kind of very broad columns that I see, but there are data on that part. Yes.
Yeah. So in this model, you also assume there's simultaneous. There's no like
Yes.
step by step.
Exactly. That's simultaneous rather than the first mover advantage. So probably it's out of scope of that.
There could be that the rebels, the other ones who started it, the governments, the other ones who started it first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's correct.
How should I like to, I'm sorry, there was a question. So what does the first left-hand quadrant tell you? You say government enforces, rebels enforce, so they both decide to keep fighting, is what you mean.
Exactly.
And then what do you mean by government suppresses rebel extortion? That is not necessary. That sounds like an outcome that will depend upon party strengths, right? Doesn't seem like a foregone conclusion.
Right. So yeah. So this part. So the first quadrant here. So the governments try to enforce all its powers, and then the rebels is kind of a not surrendering. So
Yeah,
they still fighting.
that's fine. Yeah.
There are no probably solutions on everyone. So everybody and every parties just do whatever they want to keep their powers
Yeah.
in place. So yeah, that's
Okay.
that's the idea.
And then why, but I was just confused about the second sentence that you have there.
This one, the rebel extortion.
The government suppresses rebel extortion.
I think that's a comma over there. So the conflict, if the conflict persists, the government suppresses and the rebels extorts also. So it's
Are you just kind of elaborating what all could be
Yes.
happening?
Comma would make it
yeah, this comma. That's supposed to be commas. So there's some typos over there. Some over here, and probably some of the calculations over here. Okay, so that's the first quadrant over there. So, and the second quadrant over here, government force, rebel surrender. So government just impose their powers. The government controls the resources, and there's a minimal rebel activity. And also in this part of quadrant, government surrender, rebels enforce, rebels dominate and increase the extortions. And this part where everybody just surrender. So here's the ideas of the 2x2 matrices. And
what do you mean by both surrender?
what surrenders, no one's have a powers. So they all just give up. No.
So we are in a state of anarchy.
Yeah. So yeah, you can call it a kind of a no. It's like a peace. Just kind of surrendering, something like that.
You know, I mean, I can see your matrix, you know, I mean, we have, so just because that's why I was kind of trying to understand, because, you know, this kind of speaks very closely to, if you look at Sanchez's work, you know, basically what he shows is that, you know, the government tries to take away the possibility to tax mines from the rebels. How do the rebels respond? The rebels respond, he shows, by directly plundering the assets of the people they were taxing before. Okay, so that's how they switch the strategy. And then he shows the government has two options. And he shows the government can engage in negotiation. And once the government engages in negotiations with the rebel, then the rebels stop that plundering. But it has a negative side consequence that new rebels emerge because they see that the government is weak. And in the long run, it kind of erodes the legitimacy of the government.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is that like there seems to be a lot more kind of strategy space than you're going to do
The 2x2 matrices
is allowing for, right? And that's
Right.
kind of, yeah, I'm just trying to think about how should we, yeah.
It's kind of you're right, Regis. So probably will come with the 3x3 matrices. So
I don't know,
3x3
yeah.
matrices. So it makes a complicated
I think it would be nice if you can add into like an infinite time horizon.
Okay. Yes.
Because, for example, like in the American Civil War, right?
Yeah.
There was no U.S. state before the war, right?
Right. Yes.
The state greatly expands right after the
Yeah.
Civil War ended, right? So in the long run, the effect of war eventually lead to a bigger state, which is
Right.
something that I think you can explain with a dynamic equilibrium.
That's good suggestion. So you can span all the time horizons, you know, from the Middle Age era until the 2026. So that's
Another aspect of it is also like rebels emerge and disappear
Yes.
from time to time, and they strategically choose which time they want to appear.
Mhm.
right.
So that's also like something
Yeah.
that's important as well.
Yes. Thank you so much for suggestions. Anyone? Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, just maybe this might be like nitpicky, but under the rebels and government surrender, it says rebels gain ground. I was just wondering, like, how do you ascertain that again? Because I've noticed that you mentioned number of fatalities, but some of the literature also talks about the number of events, because in some conflicts, like you mentioned earlier, there's low intensity conflict, maybe not a lot of fatalities, but there's a lot of impact in the sense of abductions and things like that, which could also be used, I guess, in the sense of extortion and all that. So I was wondering if you considered like number of conflict events for this, right?
Yes, I think that's a good suggestion. So there will enter the calculations over there that will be probably different that we use now in that the left part of the calculations. But that's probably a good idea. Yeah. Okay. So moving on. No questions. So here, this is the expected utility. So this is the government payoffs. So this is the functions of the government services, violence, so level of counter insurgency, and also the A is the government control. So A is equal to 1 if the government controls, A is equal to 0 if and also there's a rebel payoff, so expected utility of rebels. So it's functions of M. We use the M's here, also here, and the government services of violence and also the investment. So investment are here in the government payoff and also the rebel payoff. Okay.
And so what are all your state variables here?
I think the state variables you can see here, probably here. Okay, so if we come up with the empirical model, so the state variables will come up around the government rate. So we will see the national equilibrium government rate and the national equilibrium extortion rate. So that will be the one of the state variables that I use here.
No, I mean, for instance, is P in your model a state variable or is it endogenously going to be determined? Because you might say how likely is government to control something is a function of both how much resources as a rebel group I decide to put in, and vice versa. And is that being in your model, does a rebel take P as given and then choose their optimal action? Or they know that P is being so that's what I was trying to kind of.
Oh, this part of the rebels, right? Or the P here, right?
For instance, yeah, exactly.
For instance, the P. So the P, yeah, it's kind of assuming. So like P is equals to 1, meaning the government's controls, and so is that what you're asking, or
Is it exogenous or endogenous?
Exactly.
oh, that's I mean the P itself is kind of probably variations between the I mean the endogenous models always like a fee or the violence, right? Violence and also the probably the investments. So
yeah, that's what I'm asking. What does the rebel and government choose, and what does it take that given?
So probably we'll see the national equilibrium. So they will choose I think let's go to the probably the here. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So if okay. So we're moving on to the national equilibrium. So they choose, for example, if you want to. Actually, this is not like a maximizing. Probably that's what you're asking, right? I mean, the maximizing, you choose like a G or you choose like a V to maximize all the government's power, something like that, or?
Yeah, I'm just asking what are the variables that are exogenous or state variables that I don't have control over, right? I take, so
Yeah.
let's say you think about a consumer who's maximizing his utility. For instance, I would say they take, say their budget is given, the prices is given, and the utility function is given, and then I choose how many apples and how many oranges should I buy.
Exactly.
And so in this model, I'm asking what all are given to the government that they take as given and then choose their strategy. Yeah.
I think if we move from this variable, so if take as given, because all the data is over there. So if the government services, for example, so that's takes as given because of the data is over there. So the government rates and the extortion rates, that's probably the variables that's the state variables.
Mm-hmm.
If you say so, the government's rates and the extortion rates, but all the variables is takes as given. So like a fee, I, and then like a it's the proportional factors, A that we already calculated. That's we calculate. So that's not given. So we all get the alpha.
Okay, we can speak later because we're now, I think, getting confused between what the data has and what your models say it does.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that's because we are just like finding, like the national equilibrium. So
yeah, I
the equivalent, something like that.
So when you do your first order condition, right? What are you what variable are you differentiating?
Exactly. That's why I said before. This is not like a maximizing before. So this is just like a national equilibrium model.
In national equilibrium, you have to
Yeah, you have to maximize something, right?
Okay, that's probably.
You have to choose some optimal strategy, right? But-
So if you see the NE here, so I just use the actual best response over there. So for example, if the government's enforced and the rebels enforced, the A is equal to 1 and A is equal to 0, you come up with the like del GI plus equals with the explicit utility of government with the surrender. So here it's equal to here. So we probably different kind of national equilibrium that we talk about. So that maximizing something that you choose state variables that's equal to 0. So probably, but that's kind of a good suggestion. Yeah.
I just want to ask, do you have like data on like the population? So maybe like where every time they interact, like instead of tax rate, like the population base that is being captured at each point. So when the rebel wins, they capture bigger part of population, means they could control more tax. I don't know. So in terms,
Yeah. So
that could be like an outcome here.
yeah. So I think the model that we use over here is kind of based on what different geographical.
Okay.
So it's kind of similar. Similar types of like every regions have assuming have a same population, something like that. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's the NE part. that's that's the root of the evil. Over here. So yeah, so like I said, it's expected utility, government enforce, and expected utility, government surrender. So they just equal them and come up with the this one. So the government rates Nash equilibrium. So government's optimal decisions depends on the enforcement cost and investment level. So probably if you want to use that kind of maximizing problems, probably we just take one of this part of the equations, and then there's just you want to maximizing, you choose probably investment, because investment is probably the good variables that you want to.
Yeah, for instance, you as the modeler have to make the choice, right? What all the government can choose between, and similarly what all the rebels can choose between, right? And then come up with what determines in some sense your optimal set of strategies, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then the U for the rebels, so that's expected utility of rebels again. I'm not using maximizing things that they're using necessarily, but you can choose also I over there. So I is good. Is a good way to see if the investment will reduce if the extortions enforced by the rebels, something like that. So I come up with this equation. So this is the extortion rates, the national extortion rates when you equate UR and enforce and UR surrender. So, and this is the costs and benefits when enforcing violence versus the surrendering, so influenced by the level of investments and the violence that the rebels exert. Okay, so here are I think we still have time for.
We have still about
5 minutes?
10 minutes left.
10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So here are the mass equilibrium. So I compare the tax variable rates and NE, war tax, across the region. So if you see, there are strong government control correlates with the reduced rebel extortions rates, examples in Middle East and Southeast Asia. And the rebel groups struggle to finance operations through the extortions. And if you see in this picture, the rebel gains from the local investment. I mean, this pictures over here in the right side.
How do you capture solid governance? How do you measure solid governance?
Solid governance. meaning the investments. So again, investment. So if the governments enforce this power, so investments coming in very fast, and that's probably the solid. You can call it solid governance. So probably it will be clear if we see the empirical results after this. So it's probably more ideas coming up. Okay, so that's the real gains from the local investments, and there's the impact of the government imposed damage imposed by the government. So significantly reduce the rebel extortions and also the policy implications over there. So we see the here. It's here. So this is the when the governments dominate. Probably there's two questions. The revenue from investments, rebel extortion remains the secondary force in most regions. So if we see the blue solid line over here, most government tax rates are consistently higher than rebel extortion rates. So it will show that the governments have more control over revenue from the investments rather than rebels. For the regional differences, West Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa save like a probably Congo. So rebels extortions increase with the investments, but still governments are still dominant in capturing the revenue. And the Middle East and Southeast Asia, rebel extortion is minimal, probably due to strong government control. A is equal to 1, B is equal to 1 over the economic activities. So it's probably similar to study that aligned with Dexter and Prince in 2017.
So this strong government control, can we relate it to institutional quality? Probably maybe you are looking at the institutional quality, how strong, maybe positive or negative. If you use that, because I also am using SOSH.
Okay.
Yeah. And with this result, I think it's close to institutional quality.
Yeah, probably close to institutional quality. But if you want to use a different matrix, say for like other point of view rather than institutional quality, probably A is not 1, probably it's just 0.8 or 0.7 when government's still in control of it. So that's very interesting. That's the institutional quality. Okay, so here are the national government value. Again, this is not the maximizing value that I already explained before. We're just equating the national government, but here are the results. So if you see the Middle East is kind of dominating, and Southeast Asia is also dominating. But NA here, because there's infinite values, so the extortion rates, it's kind of very high. We're fighting with the GDP, it's kind of not there, so not applicable over there. So here's the results, and here are the results for the empirical results. So most of the government expenditures in Latin America and also South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, it's reducing due to the here. So I am using the government rate Nash equilibrium. So it's kind of reducing all the government expenditures within this this part of the government expenditures. Also from the level of investments due to the government rates, the national government rates here. So yeah. Questions?
Do you have like some sort of control, like when like there's a peace process, or rather like the government rates equals the extortion rate? So do we have control for that event in the analysis?
In this empirical results, the government's extortion rates, just the government extortion, government rates, not the extortion rates come here, but I use different kind of calculation here for the extortion rates. So if you want to use the government rates equals the extortion rates, probably just one calculations over here, and then you come up with different results in the empirical.
Yeah, because I mean like from what I read is the extortion rate should be higher than the government rates, because the rebel do not have like huge base to tax. So
Yeah.
they tax
Yeah.
more compared to the government, which I assume have more power and bigger base. So I mean, like that's what I read from your presentation.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, that's very interesting. So yeah, sometimes the government is overpowered by the rebels because the extortion rates is higher than the government rates. So the government rates here, assuming that this is just a tax that I proposed, that's different kind of taxes that from the VAT, income taxes, or the property taxes. So it's kind of different kind of taxes.
During the pandemic, do you think the rebel activities will increase or just stagnate?
During the pandemic, I think probably I'm not putting in the paper. So yeah, it's kind of reducing because no one's wants to interact with the actors or state, but it's not in the paper. I just have a separate calculations if you want that's in those periods 2020 to 21, 22. Yeah.
Then do you think the parts, maybe the economic variable of the part being captured by the rebel, do you think it has any effect when it comes to their extortion? For example, if a smaller part is captured, but the smaller part is so economic viable, do you think it has any effects?
Yeah, but it's not captured. Yes, it's kind of giving more effect, like a question, right? I mean, sometimes. Can you say again?
Okay, because she was talking about maybe you have
Right.
something like the population captured.
Oh yeah,
for
right.
instance. Yeah. I was thinking, sometimes it might be small population or small
Yeah,
location, but if that particular area is a kind of economic viable and is being captured by the so-called rebels, they will have more economic power. Okay,
Yeah.
they can get more money to invest in order to
Right.
Okay, continue. I think when you are through
I
with
think that this is
you can-
yeah. Probably this is the last part. If already questions already answered. Yeah, the conclusion is again the rebel extortions will decrease the U.S. investments. Part of the Latin America, Southern Africa, Middle East, where the government enforcement is strong, and in the West and North Africa. So probably rebels continues to capture significant gains from the local investments. And from your questions, probably this is not part of the paper analysis. Probably some areas they have a wealth. The government, the rebels continues to have more support from others, probably locals or countries. So that's probably not part of this analysis. And the government impact, so as the rebel extortion rates rise, so does their financial capacity. That's probably your ideas too. And the government imposed damage effectively limits the rebel extortion capabilities. For example, if the government have more spending on the military services, probably it limits the rebel capabilities. So it's out of scope if the population is very large or they have more wealthy people. I don't know, probably part of the country has some kind of been in Africa or probably in Southeast Asia, probably in Philippines. I don't know if coming from Philippines. Moros probably have more gaining power because they have some locals that has sovereignty and funding. Also in Indonesia, part of Papua, so in eastern part of Indonesia, close to Papua New Guinea, they have more power because some of the locals, even in the government, they fund the rebels to gain more extortions in those part of countries. Okay. Yeah, this is the policy implications, strengthen the security measures. So probably more spending on the military. Yeah, and then develop better tax collections. Yeah, probably this is not usual taxations that probably government want to impose. International collaborations between countries, and also integrate the economic recovery programs with the military to weaken the rebel influence. So again, this is just the state and non-state actors is involved in, not the interstate thank you so much for, if there are any more questions. Okay.
The international collaboration, I would be a bit skeptical because some countries do have international collaboration, but their main collaborators turn out to be like America, for example.
Oh, yeah,
That could be a bit of a problem there as well.
right, yeah. Good inputs, yeah.
I also think
Go ahead.
your model is actually assuming all the variables are exogenous actually.
Yes.
So then you
Exactly.
need to, so if you are not capturing endogeneity in your theoretical model, you need to do some robustness check also.
Robustness check, right.
Otherwise, just strictly assume exogeneity of your model.
Yes. Okay.
See that?
I think looks like Daniel, do you have a question?
Oh, Daniel's up here, okay.
Or was it
Hi,
just?
Rajesh. Hi, Simon. Thanks for that interesting presentation. This was a while ago when you were describing the model. I was asking if in the model, do you so can public goods help quash support for rebels in the sense that governments have almost like two choices. They can either impose like a soft power in terms of attracting people to their side, or they can impose like a hard power, using more military actions. So is there some endogenous actions there that could be integrated with the model? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. So again, like one of your colleagues here says, that it's more exogenous variables over here. The endogeneity, like a public goods involved in here, like for example, if the rebels has more powers and exploring more public goods in some areas, so that's not captured in this models. Is that answering your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Any more questions from the WebEx
Or any other questions in the floor?
floor?
Sorry, just one last clarification. How exactly did you determine the rebel financing again? Which data set did you utilize?
Yeah. So let me recall how to. So I think the rebels. They're again. There's questions from a rebel investment, right? So I think that's already calculated. I think it's one of the columns in the UCDP. But let me go through that again.
Yeah.
I think that's probably important variables that we.
Because the UCDP normally generates all its data from news reports.
Right.
They are usually used in the literature to determine number of conflict events and number of fatalities, but I've not yet seen. Maybe there's a notes column which gives like investments, but yeah,
Yeah. That's probably I need to look at again. Thank you. Any more questions?
Then maybe I think since your model is focusing on fixed bets, to make it complete, maybe you can also report the full OLS and the random.
Yeah.
Then you can now do the post-pagan test, the smart test. Then you can discuss first level endogeneity, which is captured by the fixed effect. It doesn't capture the reverse causality among us, but at least it controls for unobserved variables that may not be captured in the model. So that discussion will at least show that there's an attempt to try to address first level endogeneity.
Thank you so much. Yes, that's probably robustness check, risk mechanisms, probably. This is sort of simple also with relations with the fixed effect models.
But I like the idea. When I look at your R square, I can see the R square is consistent. I can see when the variables, more variable is added, the R square goes up.
Right.
When variables are reduced, it goes down, which makes sense. Yeah, because I've seen some studies, they had more variables, then it goes down. It doesn't make sense to me. But I can see your own case, it makes sense. It shows some consistency.
Yeah. Hopefully, all the data is making the sense. Probably some of the data makes you more like the reverse of this kind of models.
But try to correct the tax minus, it's always an issue.
Yes.
So we just
Any more questions? I think. We have to wrap up.
Yeah, we can, but we have some coffee and snacks outside,
Sure.
so we can continue with our chat outside. So thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Again for this very interesting talk, Simon, and